similarities or those reflections of the place in the people and the people in the place. This is an ancient landscape. All of those things are connected by the textures that are represented in the faces of the people, in the textures of the horses, the dust that erupts to the bookshelf cliffs, and the way that the light scrapes across them at the end of the day. All of that is texture. In the evolution of photography, we've always searched for greater depth. We've searched for greater detail. In creating that depth, you are invited into a deeper emotional landscape, and that is the point of great photography. The file is so complete that you get those subtle textures, everything from the small shadows that pebbles create, to the cracks in the mud, to the huge hundreds of feet of undulation that wrap around the landscape in the background. The 14 to 24 2.8, the 24 to 70 2.8, and the 70 to 200 2.8 were the primary lenses that I had on my camera for the entirety of the shoot. It allowed me to be quick, nimble, versatile. These lenses are tack sharp edge to edge. With a single battery, I was able to operate all day long. If you add the vertical grip, you're extending the power of the camera and the longevity of the batteries for another day, if not more. You can also use it as a vertical grip to shoot portrait orientation. In general, shooting backlit is incredibly hard on glass. The performance of the Z system was spectacular, largely because of the flawless nature of the Nikon glass. Specifically for this story, backlighting subjects, the cowboys, the family, works incredibly well because it shows the dust and the grit that this landscape is known for. The Z7 II in every way delivers across the board what I expect from a robust mirrorless system in the field. I was never concerned about the dust that was getting into it because it just didn't get into it. I wasn't concerned about having these horses come by and splash, literally soaking me, drenching me. I was never concerned about the camera being affected. I was never concerned about the camera not being able to carry the amount of detail that I wanted to tell the story that I wanted. I was only concerned about my execution of it. One of the things that I love most about the Z7 II, the new system, is the speed at which it shoots, as well as the buffer. Now, I don't have to substitute any of the quality for the speed. The ability to shoot 10 frames a second as a scene unfolds allows you a much broader choice in your edit, and allows the ability to find that serendipity, to find those moments that bring all the elements together to make your viewers feel. I think what the Z7 II system allows me to do is move closer towards capturing what I feel versus just what I see. I am a relentless perfectionist. I demand perfection from whatever I do. I demand perfection from myself. In order to achieve the things I want to achieve, I have to have absolutely the best to achieve it, to make it look and appear the way I need it to.
Every creative has it. Potential.
Do you know what it is? It's that blank canvas inside of you. It's every creative possibility in your future.
It's where your story begins.
It's not always easy to find, but you will find it if you dig deep.
It took me years to discover mine. It took less than a second to recognize it.
Feel it and grab it. And hold it tight.
My natural passion to tell stories became my reality.
Now find yours. It's there, right in front of you.
Setbacks?
There will be plenty.
Learn from them.
Leave them behind and get closer to your creative destiny.
Realize the hidden hopes and dreams.
There is a place for them in this world.
So share them with all of us.
Don't leave your canvas blank.
Be true to yourself.
Find your true potential.
It's time.
Ignite your passion.
And thank you for joining me. My name is Viktoria Haack, and during this presentation, I'm going to talk to you about using social media for art and business. So social media is increasingly necessary these days, not only to get your name out there, but also from a business and marketing perspective. But it can be quite difficult to navigate the different platforms. So as artists, we're often highly invested in the work that we produce. It's quite often very personal to us, and we can be very strongly connected to it and quite protective of the art that we produce. But when art is our business, it can be even more difficult to combine those two things, the social media aspect and the art side. So how do we grow a platform that's lucrative while still being able to creatively express ourselves? And I came across a quote recently on the internet that kind of summed up this dichotomy. So the businessman who follows trends ends up wealthy, but the artist who follows trends ends up empty. So before we continue, I will just introduce myself. So I am probably best described as a generalist photographer. So I photograph everything from landscapes and nature to portrait work. I do weddings and elopements. I shoot events as well. And I've been working professionally now for around 13 years. And I'm originally from the UK, but I'm based in a small town in central BC. And I think for the purposes of this presentation, it might be good to take you to where my photography first started and when I first started using social media. So I'm just going to show you the place that everything started. So this is the small island called Brownsea Island in the UK. It's 500 acres in size. And as you can probably see from the image here, it's not that far from the mainland. So we could get to the mainland by a kind of 15-minute boat journey. but the boats finished at 4:30 in the afternoon and then started again at 8:15 in the morning. So we were quite isolated. And it was whilst I lived here that I picked my camera back up and started shooting. And I would walk the island pathways with my dog or with my daughter, photographing the different light as it fell across pathways, the different changing weather conditions. But I had no one to really share those images with. And so I started using social media as a means of sharing the work that I was producing, and so to receive feedback on that work, and also to look at the work of other artists and to try and figure out how they were creating the images that they were creating. So it was really my way of kind of interacting with the outside world. And then 10 years ago, we moved to Salmon Arm in British Columbia. So this is the wharf in Salmon Arm on a beautiful evening with a bit of sunset going on and some moody skies. And suddenly I had the possibility of shooting all these different places. So I was able to jump in the car, shoot all these different landscapes, and I continued to share my work on social media. And at that time, it was mainly Facebook that I was using and 500px. So I would share my work, and then inevitably I was contacted by people asking me if I could either provide them with a print, or I began to be asked if I could photograph someone's family or their grad. And then slowly I got into shooting weddings and elopements, and my business really kind of took off from there. So it was really down to my use of social media that I managed to get my name out there. And it was around that time that I went to a presentation at a local small business center. And it was about using social media for business. And the thing that I really took away from that, the thing that stuck with me the most, was that they recommended that the best referrals came through word of mouth. And we were encouraged to think of social media in terms of word of mouth, but on a global scale. And this is something that has really stuck with me. And when I'm using social media today, I really try to remember that there are people behind the comments that are made, that I'm actually engaging with people out there. So I think that's something that I definitely keep in mind, and I would encourage you to do that too. So for the purposes of this presentation, I'm going to talk mainly about Instagram as a social media platform, but obviously there are other platforms out there too. I use Facebook, but I think you can apply much of what I'm going to say to all the different platforms. So let's have a look at what the benefits are of using social media. So there is connection, motivation, inspiration, sharing, networking, supporting others, friendship, fun, learning and the sharing of information, income resource and business promotion, building of community, and it can be very relaxing as well. So let's also have a look at some of the possible downsides of using social media. There can be fake interactions. It can be addictive, time-consuming. There's the inevitable comparison that we have with other users. Content can be controlled. There's always the situation of reality versus ideals. The need for validation through likes. The pressure to create content. And the need to conform to audience expectations. And so with all of this in mind, what are some good ways to have a healthy and productive relationship with social media? So I think the first one is to really be clear about your purpose for being there. And of course, that's going to be very different for every single one of you. Schedule time, or at least be aware of the time that you spend on social media. It can be really easy to spend hours on there without keeping an eye on just how much time you're spending. Try to feel inspired rather than compare yourself. Think before posting. Are you fostering a community of support and positivity? And also remember that online communications stay there. So really consider just the things that you say and how they are going to stay online. And consider your mental health. Think about turning off notifications so that you're constantly not kind of pinged back onto the platform. That is the job of social media, to keep you on there. So you really have to be very conscious about just setting time for yourself to be there and making sure that you come off, okay? So what is the purpose of your social media? And I'm going to just talk to you about the reasons why I'm there, and obviously this will be very different for each of you. So I'm there because I want to be creative. I want to share my work. I want to find inspiration in the work of others. I want to connect. I want to be social. I want to engage with people who could potentially become my clients. And I may also want to connect with brands and companies. So how often and when should you post? So the algorithm works best when you post regularly. So I try to post once a day. That's going to be possibly, well, not possible for some people, but I do try and post once a day just because of that algorithm. You can find out when your followers are most active. And I know that my followers are most active in the morning. However, that's not a great time for me to interact with a post I make. I find that my mornings tend to be quite busy. And so for me, even though my followers are most active in the morning, I'm actually best to make my posts somewhere in the kind of late afternoon, early evening. And that way I can interact with the post. And I try to interact with the post for at least half an hour once I've made it, because all of those comments that you make continue to push the post a bit higher in the algorithm. So it's quite important to do that. And you can use external apps to schedule your posts. So apps like Hootsuite. I don't do that. I tend to, as I say, want to interact with the post personally. So I don't tend to do that, but you can do that. And one of the things that you can do to make life a little easier is you can create drafts of your posts before you make them. So you can spend maybe an hour a week putting together your 7 posts for that week with a little bit of just a little bit of text to go with it, maybe add a few tags to it just to save you time on the day. So I use the drafts quite a lot just to formulate some posts. So how do you choose which images to post? And social media is notorious for putting users into a box. Your followers want to see the same kind of content, which as an artist can be quite difficult. You can feel very constrained. And so I am always aware of this, and I'm always constantly wanting to just push open the constraints of that box that social media tries to put you into. And so I divide the posts that I make into 3 different categories, so 3 kind of styles of image. So I'll just go through those with you. So I put them under the 3 categories of inspiration. So those would be images that you might find on my website. So kind of portfolio style images. Images that would foster connection. So those may be images that might be shared more readily, or they may promote more conversation. So you may have more comments and more discussion with those. And then those images that would allow personal growth for myself. And those would be perhaps quieter images, perhaps ones that my followers might not be so used to seeing that style of image, but would allow me to test the waters of different things I might be experimenting with, and just to continue to grow creatively. And so I'm just going to show you a few examples of those styles of images from my point of view. So these would be some images that would come under the category of inspiration. And then images that may come under the category of connection. And then finally, excuse me, images that would come under the category of personal growth. So how do you think of captions? This is going to be obviously different for each of you, depending on the work that you're creating. But for me, I usually like to say something about the image. So it might be just describing what's happening in the image. So for example, for this one, this is a kitten that's just a couple of days old. This was an image that was taken for the BC SPCA. So I may describe some of that information. I might also let the viewer know that this was shot with a macro lens. So there might be some gear information in there as well. But quite often I will try to relate the image to something that's actually happening maybe for me, so how I feel on that day, or if there's something that's happening kind of culturally or globally, if there's a way of linking into that as well, then I will often try and do that. It tends to flow. It's not something I necessarily think of that consciously, but I will often try and connect in with what's happening around me. So when I'm asked what my biggest piece of advice is when using social media, it is to respond to my followers and to be authentic. And I think this again takes it back to the very beginning of this presentation when I talked about social media being word of mouth. So depending on how you respond to people, you know, who is going to want to book a workshop with you if you don't appear to be someone that they would want to spend time with, or who will want to book a shoot with you or spend 12 to 14 hours shooting their wedding with them. So I think it's important to really interact with your followers. So my personal philosophy is not everyone is going to like everything that you put out there, and you need to be prepared for that. So don't just expect likes and adulation. You will get negative responses, and I think it's important to think about how you will deal with them. So don't just jump in there if you feel angry by something that someone has said. I would encourage you to not just jump straight in and start shouting in response. So you have many ways of dealing with those negative responses. I find that the best way to deal with that is actually to hopefully let my followers jump in and defend me. That's kind of the best possible response that you can have. So if you let something sit a little bit, maybe someone will jump in and respond for you. You can turn off commenting, and this is something that I've done. For example, I did a shoot with a young lady who wasn't a professional model, and she was quite shy. And I wanted to monitor the comments that were being made just to make sure that there was nothing in there that would be difficult for her to read. So overnight while I was sleeping and I couldn't keep an eye on the post, I turned the commenting off, and then I turned it back on again in the morning. So that's something that you can do. If you have someone who's just being an absolute kind of internet troll, you can obviously block them, delete the comments and block them. But I do think that how you respond to your followers is how they're going to form opinions of you based on that response. So I do think it's really important to think about that. I would also encourage you to think long term. So as your account grows, so does your responsibility. And I heard someone say recently that if you have just one follower, then you can consider yourself to be an influencer. And I think you do need to think in those terms as well. So for example, with COVID-19 happening right now, I think it would be quite irresponsible to be promoting travel if that's not something that your provincial government is wanting you to do right now. So even if you feel like you don't have many followers and it doesn't really hurt, I think you should think as though you have a bigger account than maybe you have. Things like not geotagging locations. There are those places out there that are really sensitive, and having larger numbers of people visit them without the infrastructure to support them could be really damaging. And you may feel like you're only sending possibly 10 people there, but as your account quietly grows, that potential increases. So I would encourage you to think again as if your account is perhaps bigger than it is, and take responsibility. And also consider who you partner with. It can be easy, or it can be quite difficult actually, because you could be approached by a business or company who would like you to promote something, and they want to pay you for it, and it's very tempting to take that money. But I would, have a look at the ethics of the company. Is this a company that you would want to be associated with long term? So look into things like that as well. So Instagram stories can be a great way of also utilizing the Instagram platform. So they only last for 24 hours. And so it can be a great place to try out new things and perhaps put things that you don't want to sit long term on your main feed. So I think they can be a great way to allow people to connect with you. You can show, if you choose to have on your main page just maybe your artwork, in your stories you can show little bits about your life. And for me, I choose to keep my family off of social media, but I will share things about my dog, and that does foster some connection with the people that are following me. So you can show things like the behind the scenes of shoots, workshops, or travel, and that helps to build interest in your brand as well. You can create the community that you want to be involved with. So for example, on a Friday, I do something called Feature Friday, where I share the work of other artists and photographers. And it's a great way of connecting with those other artists. I've built some great relationships with those people. They will often then reshare my stuff. And it's also a good way of putting maybe something different in front of your followers' eyes. So it may be that they shoot a very different style to you, but it might be something that you would maybe want to move into in the future. And you're just gradually introducing a few different maybe styles in front of your followers. It can be good for things like that. You can also monetize them as well. And I have a recent example. A company wanted to work with me, but they didn't have the budget to pay for something to be on my main feed. And I actually didn't want it to sit there. But I was quite happy to make a little bit of extra income by putting something in my stories. So it can be a great way of monetizing them too. And Reels, that's a new feature within Instagram. So this is very similar to TikTok, which was trending at the beginning of the pandemic. It's another social media platform. And I noticed at that time when it was trending that obviously these short videos to music was something that people were really enjoying. And so Instagram have subsequently created something called Reels. And again, it can be another great way to connect with people. So you can edit short video clips to show the behinds of scenes or shoots of some kind or hikes. So there's lots of ways of using them. The videos can be either 15 or 30 seconds in length. And then the music that you choose can be another way to showcase your brand or style, and to evoke a mood. So if you're kind of trying to link your brand with that kind of music, that kind of feel, can be a great way to do that. And also music that's currently trending on the Reels platform will, I believe, push that higher in the algorithm too. And because it's a new feature on Instagram, the algorithm does seem to be behind it, so it's quite a good thing to use right now. So how can you drive traffic to your page? So the thing I keep mentioning is by being social and connecting with others. I think that is the most important thing that you can do. So you can find and use relevant hashtags. So you can have up to 30 hashtags on a post. If you're not quite sure where to find them, I would encourage you to perhaps look at another artist who has similar work to yourself and see which hashtags they might be using. Or you can even Google, for example, if it was, I don't know, yoga hashtags you were looking for, or dog hashtags or something, you can Google that and come up with some hashtags too. And then I put them in my phone under the notes section and with the heading of, for example, landscape photography or portraits. And then you can copy and paste them onto your posts, which makes things a little bit quicker. And I tend to bury my hashtags in the comments rather than in the main kind of bit of information about the post. So you can tag other accounts, for example, hubs in your post. So when you're actually making the post, you can tap on it and you can select up to 20 other accounts as well that you can tag. So for those of you that may not be familiar with what hubs are, they are accounts on Instagram that usually they can be quite large accounts that will share the work of photographers or artists, and hopefully with credit, make sure that they are giving credit. So here's an example. This one is called Awesome Earth, and I think they have 3.1 million followers. So you can actually tag these hubs, and then obviously your work, if they share it, is going to be seen by other people beyond your usual followers. So again, it's increasing your network of people that will see your work. So you can partner with other relevant social accounts. So it may be that you have a friend who is also, for example, a landscape photographer. They could mention you in their stories or on their feed, and you can do the same for them. And then you're actually cross-pollinating the two accounts and helping each other to grow. You can do things like contests and giveaways. So you may want to partner with a company, or you could, for example, give away a print, or perhaps you could give away part of a shoot, something like that. So there's lots of ways that you can work on contests and giveaways. You can have additional accounts. So I have an account for my dog, and I will often share in his stories my posts so that I'm actually sending some of his followers to my account, and vice versa. I will also tag him in my posts and my stories, and I'm basically, again, cross-pollinating, growing both of the accounts together. And you can also do sponsored posts. So you can have a look into your analytics to find out who your followers are. So for example, if you were wanting to promote, say you've made a post and it was about a landscape photography workshop for women that you were doing, you could find, you know, your women followers, perhaps if they're based in Alberta or somewhere that you're actually looking to target. You can look for a specific age range, and you can put money behind those posts as well. So what type of content works best for engagement? And this is a constantly movable feast on all of these social media platforms. But currently, I would say that the swipeable posts or the multiple posts are quite good. So I've got a little bit of a screen grab here. If I just play that. So those are posts where you can have up to 10 images or videos in one post. And they quite often will have pretty good engagement. So here's another multiple post So for this one, I have the cropped in image and then the full image. And then I have a video of the behind the scenes happening. And this one actually has music to it, which you can't hear here, but you could have talking. And you have up to 1 minute of video possible. So I think this can also add extra value to your posts. And then as this video comes to a close, I show the full image again, and then the metadata, so the camera settings and the camera that I was using as well. So another multiple post here. So I've got the cropped in image, the wider view, the image without the person in the frame, then a little bit of what's going on in the back of the camera there. And then just some of the behind the scenes of accessing the location. So this is my friend just kind of accessing the spot. She was the model in that shot. So as I've mentioned earlier, there's also analytics and insights. So just to recap a little bit, you can look at the location of your followers. You can look at whether they are male or female, what their age range is. So this can be useful information. It's not something I use a great deal myself, but it can be useful to access that information. So how do you stay current and keep growing? So for me, the big one is gut instinct. So just listening to what feels right for me. I would encourage you to just listen to your gut instinct as the main one. Notice trends. I mentioned earlier about TikTok being something that was trending. So just being aware of what seems to be trending at the time. And sometimes I will take a little bit of that trend on board, and maybe it could be a trend in terms of the style of imagery even. So for example, in wedding photography, it could be a trend there, and I might take a little bit of that trend on board. But I think that the difficulty with going with a trend is that obviously when that's no longer trending, you are left with something that's perhaps not something that you want to be left with. So just noticing trends, being aware of them, I think is a good thing. Pay attention to other accounts. How are they growing? So if you have been following an account for a while, for example, and you notice that they are suddenly increasing their following exponentially, have a look at their account. What is it that they are doing to help that account grow? So keep an eye on things like that. Stay on top of new features within the platform. I mentioned Reels earlier is currently something that's fairly new. I'm lucky in that I have a 17-year-old daughter, so she's quite good at helping me navigate some of the new features that I find. But if you don't have that kind of help, then you can go onto the internet and just Google the new features and try and figure out how to use them. And you can watch the occasional educational tutorial. This is something I do rarely, but occasionally I have watched some tutorials, and sometimes I might glean just one thing that could be useful. So it can be worth doing that as well. And then, of course, keep coming back to engage, be social, and respond. So just wrapping up here, I think it's important to remember why you are using social media in the first place. So for me, it is about connection, creativity, and personal growth. And as always, finding a balance is absolutely key. So I'd like to thank you so much for watching and listening. I hope that there has been something that's been useful for you there. If you have any questions or comments, I would love to hear from you. My contact information is on the screen right now. So thanks very much.